Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello everyone and welcome along to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Hurling is upon us and Jacqui Tyrrell is with myself and Rory to look ahead to week one. Feels like Christmas morning, Jacqui, doesn't it? We've waited long enough and hurling is here.
Yes, absolutely, Jacqui. It's brilliant. The sun is shining. It's still a little bit cold, so it's not total championship fever yet, but it's brilliant. Finally, finally it's here. League is over, and we have a great championship ahead. A lot of games to get through, and some saucy ones this weekend to kick off. So can't wait. This is ultimately what we're all about. You know, the championship haircuts will be in full swing this week, and off we go.
Yeah. And you know what? No better way to start it, Rory, as well. When you look at the fixtures, you've got a repeat of the All-Ireland final, a repeat of a Leinster final, a crucial game between Dublin and Offaly. Like, they're coming thick and fast, and there's something on the line in all of these games. And Limerick in action, so much intrigue around them. Like, I think this is going to be a phenomenal opening weekend.
Brilliant. And like even Wexford and Antrim, I think is a massive game. It's a huge one for both teams. Davy's first championship outing as Antrim manager. Like it's you've obviously Cork, Clare, full house. I think there's close to 40,000 heading for Tyrrell. The Munster Hurling Championship, like the Munster Council are just making it rain at the minute in terms of ticket sales and everything else. So it's just phenomenal. And unlike football, I suppose, where football suffers, and we don't like comparing the two, obviously, but there tends to be a bit of a phoniness about the football championship when it gets to this time of the year, because the provincial championships are sort of, you know, wedged into the middle of the season. Hurling has no such issues. It's basically it's full metal jacket from week one, and what a way to start. And from an RTE perspective as well, you've got Galway Kilkenny on Saturday, which I think is a fascinating fixture. Now look, they generally will probably both feel that they'll end up in a Leinster final, so the round robin games between the two can sometimes be a little unusual, let's say, but we've had major incidents down through the years. Like, who could forget the famous handshake, Jacqui, between and I think Henry is making, if I'm not mistaken, a welcome return to TV screens this weekend, so that'll add a little bit of colour to the whole weekend experience for people at home. And then look,
great to have a few stripy men back in around Rory.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah. The king returns. But
absolutely.
But like, look, I suppose the fixture in Ennis has just really grabbed everybody, just for exactly the reason you said. I mean, it's to have a repeat of last year's All-Ireland final on the very, very first weekend of the Hurling Championship is like, you know, that's just a bonanza, and it's blockbuster.
Yeah, it has that feel about it. I just wonder what it is going to be, Jacqui, in reality when the ball gets thrown in, because I think, yes, there is an optimism around Cork hurling, but they haven't actually beaten Clare in the championship since 2021. So you're thinking, okay, there's all this massive optimism around a team that people are talking about potential All-Ireland contenders. But if you lose on your opening weekend, suddenly you're in a completely different situation. So, you know, it's kind of do or die already for Cork.
It's a tricky one because the train just took off from Cork station. I know even knew a railway track down there, and it's just been bombing through everyone in the whole country. But suddenly it could come to a shuddering stop in Ennis. And the interesting thing about Clare and the Clare people and the Clare media, they're prickly enough down there. They're spiky enough. Like if that was Kilkenny now and they were All-Ireland champions and people were kind of writing them off, they would just kind of go quiet. But Clare are very vocal, which I love about saying, how are we such rank outsiders? We were All-Ireland champions last year. I mean, how are Cork so overwhelmingly favourites? And look, there's merit in what Cork have done. So you can imagine the narrative, you can imagine the stories been spun down there. And in ways, it's beautiful what Brian Lohan has done. The hurler of the year, he just put out there the story that Shane O'Donnell is gone for the year. The place went crazy about it. No one talking about Clare as All-Ireland champions. And suddenly we hear during the week that Shane O'Donnell could feature in maybe some part of the championship. So there's been no talk about Clare being All-Ireland champions. There's no talk of back-to-back. All the narrative is about Clare, is about Cork. And I mean, you can imagine them circling the wagons blowing Ennis. You can imagine what Brian Lohan is saying this week. And you can imagine the raucous atmosphere that's waiting for the Rebels as they go down to Clare. So it's perfectly teed up for everyone. So I'm really looking forward to that one. It's not going to be straightforward to Cork. Cork do hold all the aces in terms of form, confidence, competition for places. Clare have struggled hugely throughout the league. But how many times have we seen in the GAA world when it comes to championship, you've a different animal waiting for you? So that's the tricky navigation that Cork are going to have to get through in the Munster round robin.
I think that's the unknown, Rory, because everybody knows what Cork are bringing. They've scored 13 goals in 3 league games. They're absolutely flying. They've delivered silverware. They've done everything that they can. It's actually the unknown quantity here is Clare.
Yeah, and they went through the league. They were missing some key players. I think Dermot Ryan potentially is still out. He's a big loss. He was excellent. He's always been excellent against Cork, and we know Shane O'Donnell is going to be missing. I think from Cork's perspective, I don't think they're going to be fooled hugely by the success of the league. There's a long-standing tradition within Cork to treat the league with an element of contempt. I don't think that changes hugely on the back of winning it. I really don't. I think people will still know, and Don Logue mentioned it on the very first night of the Sunday game when you guys returned and you covered the league finals, because that was still being played while the championship was going on, but we won't go there. But you're judged on championship. You were judged on championship. And I think this time last year, Cork went down to Walsh Park in Waterford. They did not bring a championship mindset. Waterford under Davy were preparing for war. Cork didn't come with that mindset, and they got turned over, and rightly so. Now, they were a little bit harshly treated. I felt that day they had a sending off, which I thought was a little bit harsh. And look, we know that if you go down to 14 players, which ultimately happened against Clare again the following week below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Now, Clare were the better side by a good distance, but again, losing a player, getting a player sent off, you know, all of those types of things, you just don't know what could happen. And these are the things that can happen in championship. But I'd expect Cork to come fully loaded again on Sunday. They will know that the league now, I would imagine, is parked, and they will have their minds focused on one big prize, and we know what that is. And their first rung on the ladder to climb this Sunday. But this is a 50. I would see this as very much as a 50-50 game. I think Jacqui is right. I think Clare have been disrespected, not by Cork, by the way, but it's just a sort of a general narrative around them. And that, I don't know if they've been given the credit they truly and duly deserved for winning last year's epic. So I think they'll have their own personal grievances. My only concern for Clare, I mentioned this last night to Jacqui Tyrrell in a text, their age profile is not it's not the healthiest. There are a lot of key performers the wrong side of 30 and deep into the wrong side of 30. And Jacqui rightly mentioned back to me, he said, look, there was nothing wrong with them 9 months ago. Are they that much different 9 months later? But sometimes you just don't know when that engine is going to start leaking, and it could happen at the wrong time. I think in an overall context from the Munster Hurling Championship, I expect a shock or two along the way here, a couple of big surprises. Could we get one on Sunday? Well, what's a surprise on Sunday? A surprise on Sunday will be a draw, I'd say, nearly, because anything could happen. But I don't think Tipperary are without a chance in this championship, and I definitely believe that Waterford will spring a shock or two as well. So there's loads to anticipate, and it all throws in, as we say, this weekend. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think if Clare are unknown quantity, Jacqui, I think Tip is probably the same, because they were going so well early in the league. And Rory's right, look, treat the league at your peril. But it's very hard to ignore the form that we saw from them early on. It's just they fell off a cliff so poorly against Cork that you're thinking, well, where are they now? And can they reignite that form? That's the biggest question, because there's no better place to test yourself than against Limerick.
Yeah, it was the manner in which they lost the league final, Jacqui, in terms of the lack of physicality, how Cork just owned the game, they bossed them around, they played on their own terms, really. Tip never really engaged. And there was a moment in about 7 or 8 minutes gone when Darren McCarthy chased, I think it was Sean O'Donnell back to field and hooked him. And you said, Tip are on it here today. They're going to match him physically and go toe to toe to him. This is good. But after that, they never came with anything. So, and we've seen that trend from Liam Cahill, very strong early parts of the league, maybe getting a march in terms of physicality and fitness banked with other teams. So he's a bit of work to do in terms of where they are. Excuse me, no doubt about it. They've had an encouraging league from the younger guys' point of view, but I just didn't see enough of him. Willie Connor started at 11, got whipped early doors in the league final. That's a pivotal position. The backs that we thought maybe are at a better stage and they were, didn't really perform well in the league final, and Cork can do that. But look, that's what you're going to be coming up against. So, few more questions than answers from the league final for Tipperary. And that's the problem. You don't have long from a league final into championship. It was different before. When we won a league, you'd 4, 5, 6 weeks into a championship. The hype would die down if you won a league final. There was a round or two played of a club. You don't have that. You have 2 weeks to kind of manage that piece and get it ready for championship, because every Munster round robin game is an All-Ireland final. You lose your first game, you're on the back foot. Lose the second game, you're almost gone. So it's do or die for these teams this weekend. It'll be interesting to see how Tip recover. I'm very interested to see what team they put out and how the forward line out. There are some nuggets. Sam O'Farrell has been excellent. Darren McCarthy has had a good league. Joe Caesar is promising. Robert Doyle is excellent at cornerback. Owen Conley has been a success at fullback. So there's a lot to build on. But coming up against Limerick this weekend, they need to have all their ducks in a row to have a chance.
Which makes it all the wilder, Rory, that Limerick are going for 7 in a row. Like, given how much the Munster Championship has given us in the ding-dong battles, to think that a team could potentially have 7 of them is outrageous. Like, you know, it is having them with the likes of Jacqui's team. That is the situation they find themselves in. It's a complete glory years, albeit they're not All-Ireland champions this year.
Yeah, and the fascinating and almost extraordinary thing about it is when one team dominates a competition as much as they have, generally that has a sort of a draining effect on attendances, interest, but the opposite seems to be the case. Now, I think that is largely due to the fact that as much and all as they have been the dominant force, they've never had it easy. And I think that's the mark of how truly great they are and how great they have been, certainly. If you look at it on a couple of occasions, I mean, they played 2 of the greatest Munster finals I have ever seen. Now, there have been many great Munster finals, but last year's one was poor. They won that reasonably comfortably in the end. But the previous 2 were just incredible Munster finals. And we saw a situation, I think, 2 years ago where they beat Cork by a point and had the match flipped by 1 point the other way. They were out. So, like, the margins in Munster are so fine. The margins of victories between the teams, it's nearly always a goal or less. And you're talking about games that are played 328 to 229 and this type of things, and still the margins are so small. So that's what's ultimately driving it. I saw Sean Moran in the Irish Times make the point that, you know, people need to appreciate it while we can, and that this might not last forever. I don't agree. I actually don't agree with Sean at all. I think this is going to go on for quite a while, because I think Tipperary are gathering momentum at underage level. We know Clare have their house in order off the field, and look, Cork seem to be set fair for the next number of years, and Limerick are, you know, they keep producing really good competitive underage teams, and they will be likewise again this year on the 20 level, and they have some good players coming through again. I suppose the big question from a Limerick perspective is, and this I think what will fascinate an awful lot of people, is apparently he's got a pretty healthy panel for the first time in a while. They have suffered a lot of injuries because there's a lot of wear and tear on this team. It's only natural. So it'll be very interesting to see team selection heading up to Tyrrell. Does he go with a lot of the players that we have seen now for nigh on 10 years? Or will we see the Adam Englishes, the Cathal O'Neills, Aidan O'Brien's, the Bull, will we see those players inserted into the team? And will he start to give players of the next generation a little bit of a leg into the team to try and kind of refresh it? That's a big question for a lot of people. And are they then up to championship, up to the cut and thrust of championship? And look, I think all of that's going to come out as well. And we'll get a really good indication this Sunday in Thurles.
How do you know, Jacqui, when is the right time for that to happen? Because let's say with your Kilkenny team, you have that where there's a group of them coming through at the same time. Let's say wind back the years when Brian Cody was making the decision of he's good to go now. How do you hand over the keys and do what Rory is talking about there?
Very easily, Jacqui, when you don't win an All-Ireland final. When that happens and you have won 4 of them of the previous years, it's time for change. It's time to look at everything you do, from you as a manager to your selection committee, to your S&C, to your physio, because that word of stale has crept in somewhere along the line. And that manifests itself onto a field, and then you lose a game. So I've no doubt about it. John Kiley will not go with that same 15 that finished the game against Cork last year. He can't. If he does, which I would be extremely surprised, they're not going to win an All-Ireland this year and probably won't win a Munster Championship. So you would look at it. I fully for me, Conor O'Neill is bedded into that team, and
he is. Sorry, he is.
So he's not a new guy, although he is very young. So he will play. Adam English has to be on that 15 in midfield for his energy, for his hurling IQ, for his ability, and he can dovetail with a Keane Lynch. He can play with a William O'Donoghue. If Dara O'Donoghue comes back in, I think he'll definitely play. And if he doesn't start, I think Shane O'Brien will be on this team before the year is out. For me, he's a better inside forward and offers more to this attack than Seamus Flanagan. I think he could start this weekend. And if he doesn't, I think by the end of the Munster round robin campaign, he'll be nailed on as a 14, I think. And I think he's a pivotal guy for this team now in that attack with Aaron Gillan. So you've 2 definite new guys. Cotton O'Neill is relatively new, a bit of fresh blood. He wasn't there to start. So there's 3 guys. And you're possibly going to have, you are going to have a new goalie. He mightn't be young, he mightn't be fresh, not like that, whether Shane Dowling or Jason. So suddenly you're going to have 3-4 guys. You have to come back with new guys. And even when we were successful with Kilkenny, Brian Cody loved bringing a new lad in. He got a kick out of an older lad being pushed aside, bringing in a Paul Murphy, bringing in a Colin Fennelly, bringing in a David Hersey, bringing in a Walter Welsh, bringing in a Kieran Joyce. Every year he looked. And I almost felt if there was an established lad and a new lad coming afterwards, 50-50 between them, he'd nearly go with the new lad just to freshen that up, just to give someone a kick in the back in the backside. I think John Kiley will go with that same ilk. It won't be radical change. There might be 2 new faces on it this week. The next game there might be 3. But come at the end of the Munster round robin, this will have a new look to this Limerick team with 2 or 3 new faces. Maybe a new position change. Kyle Hayes maybe at 6. That offers a new dynamic as well to the team as well. So I feel that's where John Kiley's head is and where he's going to go with.
Fascinating. It really is. What about your 3 teams then in both? Because let's start in Munster. To me, I've changed my mind so many days over this, Jacqui, about who's getting out, who's not getting out. If somebody put a gun to your head now and said, pick your 3 from Munster, are you settled on who it is?
Yeah, I am, Jacqui. It's Limerick, Clare and Cork for me. It really is. And just the other 2 teams, Waterford's record has been poor. Although they've had green shoots through 1B, I didn't see enough of them to unearth those 3. I mean, those 3 are monsters in the hurling world. Limerick, we don't need to talk a whole lot about them. Cork, the league form, and I think Clare will come right to get in that top 3. Tipperary, I think, have, as I said, more questions than answers after the league, and I think they're probably just a little off us in breaking that 3 this year.
Agree, Rory?
Limerick, Clare, and I'm going to go with Tipperary. Did
you just say Limerick, Clare and Tip?
Sorry, Limerick, Cork and Tip. My apologies. Limerick, Cork and Tip.
He'll never get away with this.
I was just going to say that. No, I get a sense. I think one of the things that plays a huge factor in your fortunes, and we saw it last year, how close Cork were to exiting the championship, right? And then they end up going on a run all the way to the All-Ireland final. The actual run of fixtures you have has a big impact, particularly in Munster. And if Clare were to lose on Sunday, And let's be honest, it's a 50-50 chance that could happen. I think the following week to have to go down to Walsh Park, a fresh Waterford who have sat back, who are, have been able to sit back and watch everything that's going on. Okay, they have no championship matches under the belt and have been operating in Division 1B for the spring, but they've got a lot of their key players back. I think Prunty is back. I could easily see Waterford turning Clare over there, and I think that would put Clare right into a very, very dangerous mix. And from that point of view, I'm going to go Cork, Limerick and Tip.
Interesting. All right. Is it more straightforward in Leinster then, Jacqui, to pick your three, or is it more difficult?
I suppose to pick your top two is probably a little more straightforward in Kilkenny, in Galway. I think Galway are moving nicely. Yeah, they've still some issues to work on and things like that. But the third spot, like, you could pick anyone really. Yeah. In all due respect to Antrim, they probably aren't going to feature in the top three. Dublin, Wexford, Offaly. Not much between the three of them. I'm torn with Offaly. They're going in the right direction. I'm just wondering, with the likes of Dan Burke at 11 and Donald Shirley at 6, another couple of years, these are going to be outstanding pillars of the Offaly team. They are still quite young, and I was worried for them at times in the league final in terms of how the game physically, they just struggled a small bit with them. Outstanding stickmen and have been brilliant in the under-20s and colleges, but I just worry they might come up a bit short, and then it's a toss of a kind between Dublin and Wexford for me.
I actually think that means this game this weekend, Rory, between Dublin and Offaly, whoever wins that is already in a significant position in terms of getting out of the group. Like, I think to have a game like that, knowing for them this is a must win, I think that's massive for both teams.
I also think, yes, and it's a huge game, 6 o'clock in Parnell Park, and like, I know people beat up on Parnell Park. I love Parnell Park.
I love it as well.
I love it. It's such a cozy little ground, Jacqui. Yeah, the Nell. Like, I love the Nell. Like, do you know what the great thing about Parnell Park is, Jacqui? And particularly when you watch an inter-county hurling match there, you can physically hear the flakes and the belts. Like, you can't hear that when you're in a Thurles or a Páirc Uí Chaoimh, because the crowds will be so big and you are so distant from the pitch. But when you're in Parnell Park, and I've often gone in there, I remember watching Dublin and Galway there a couple of years ago, you were wincing at the noises now and the hits that were going in. It was, and that's the great thing about Parnell Park. 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, there's worse places to be than watching Dublin and Offaly. I think physically, Jacqui mentioned about 6 and 11. They will have an advantage over Offaly, I would imagine. But there's a craft in Offaly hurling that, very few teams will be able to match in the coming years. I think Adam Screeney potentially might be back in the mix again. He'll add a little bit of wizardry up front. We've seen in the past, and I know the Leinster Championship might feel like the poor relation at times because Munster tends to get all the glamour, the razzmatazz and the big crowds. But the Leinster Championship has been unbelievable. Like, it doesn't get the same razzmatazz, but I mean, we've seen some incredible stories. We had one year there where I think there was 4 teams finished at equal points, and Galway found themselves out of the championship on scoring averages. Last year, did they draw with Kilkenny?
Kilkenny, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Like, we've seen Westmeath get a result against Wexford. We've seen incredible contests within the Leinster Championship itself. Now, does that take away from some of the old truisms? And that is, Kilkenny are still top dog or top cat, whichever one you want. No, look, let's be honest. Kilkenny are the best team in Leinster still, and will be probably this year. I wouldn't be 100% certain that Galway will make it all the way in there with them. I'd expect a really good championship campaign from Wexford. I think Wexford showed enough in the league to go away to Limerick and away to Clare. I know it's league hurling, and I know the teams might have shifted their focus, but this is a Wexford team that had shipped a couple of bad beatings. I think they showed enough when they had enough players on the field to go down to the Gaelic grounds and Ennis and win. Showed to me that there is something there, and they will cause problems. They will cause problems for Galway. They will absolutely cause problems for Kilkenny, because that seems to be their raison d'etre. And but it's absolutely essential that they win this weekend. Where Wexford have slipped up in the past is when they're expected to win and they end up getting caught by a team that's maybe playing at a lower standard to theirs, and they don't seem to be able to rise up to that. They need to put Antrim away and put them away this weekend and make sure they get those 2 points on the board and see where they go from there.
Is the difficulty with Leinster, Jacqui, that because it tends to be Galway and Kilkenny in a final, Kilkenny going for 6 in a row, yet with Limerick going for 7 in a row in Munster, it doesn't have the same sort of negative connotations with it, that because people think, sure, Kilkenny are winning it at a canter, in the way that Rory has said it hasn't been easy for Limerick and they've had to mix it at times. Kilkenny seem like they have cruised through a lot of finals playing well. And maybe that's been the difficulty with Leinster over the years, that yes, there is massive competition in the other teams coming behind them, but Kilkenny are still a good shot ahead of everybody else.
Interesting, I suppose, the Leinster final last year. I mean, Kilkenny put Dublin to the sword and Dublin just fell flat on the day for whatever reason. But there is that slight concern in Kilkenny in terms of normally what Kilkenny are really good at is beating teams. If they're meant to beat a team by a certain amount, they normally do. But last year, Carlow catching them was a big shock, really. I suppose catching is unfair to Carlow. Carlow were very, very much deserved their draw that day. That was concerning from Kilkenny point of view. I've no doubt about it. Yeah, they recovered and went on. I think that Leinster final actually hurt them, and they kind of slipped walk a small bit into the Clare game, and they got caught and weren't ruthless enough in that first half. So that's probably the negative connotation if you have another Leinster campaign and you don't get really at the acid test, because with all due respect, you know, Kilkenny and Galway will expect probably to get to a Leinster final, and we've seen that before in some of the games how it's washed out. But it's probably a little different this year. Offaly are no rollover. Offaly will ask serious questions of any team. Antrim up in Corrigan Park is no easy game or no place to go. So you have to be on it. There's no week where you can actually rotate guys and think that you'll get the win as well. Kilkenny is definitely getting more and more competitive. Offaly have changed that completely. But there is an almost inevitability around some of the fixtures in terms of Kilkenny's performance. But I do remember last year going up to Parnell Park, Kilkenny drew a Carlow the previous week, and they were kind of looking, if Kilkenny lost here, lads, they're in serious trouble. And that was the first time in years I heard in Parnell Park Dublin supporters saying, "Come on, you boys in blue," and I said, God, we're up against it today. And in fairness, Kilkenny dug it out. So there is that sense when Kilkenny need to really dig out results, but it's not straightforward. We've a poor record against Wexford. Antrim going to Corrigan Park isn't an easy place to go. Galway won't be easy this weekend. Awfully no more a rollover, and they'll put it up to them. So there is an undercurrent of Leinster being a bit more competitive of what years gone by.
Yeah, and I agree. I think there's a very traditional feel to the Leinster Hurling Championship for the first time in a long time. Wexford, Offaly, Dublin, Galway, and Kilkenny, and Antrim are obviously in there as well. Like to see Offaly back up competitive. I think Leinster will provide a huge level of intrigue. Now, we may not see that really play itself out in the sort of the public limelight, because very often what has happened in the Leinster Championship, Jacqui, is that some of the really landmark results or some of the major upsets and surprises tended to happen when there was no cameras, or certainly no live TV cameras there. That doesn't mean they didn't happen. It's like a tree falls in a forest, you know? So that to me, I think Leinster is, while it is overshadowed, and we understand that, and Munster does get a lot of the glory, I'm really looking forward to the Leinster Championship this year. Really looking forward to it. I think Offaly will bring something different, and I think it'll start in Parnell Park on Saturday night.
All right. Well, give me your three then, Rory. Who's getting out?
I am going to go with Kilkenny and Galway to get out, but I'm going to give Wexford a shot at making a Leinster final.
Wow. Big shout. Jacqui Tyrrell, who's getting out of Leinster?
Kilkenny, Galway. I am a little worried for Wexford in terms of their key guys and the injuries. I think Conor Mack is out. Leachin, we see the difference this team is with a Leachin in it. If he somehow was injured or missed the game, and we know how competitive these games are on, and there's not much time for downtime, I think I could be worried a little bit for Wexford. Liam Ryan is very injury prone and so pivotal to that team. I'm going to might give an outside shout to maybe an Offaly sneaking in.
It's mad, isn't it?
And what a story that would be.
That's what I was going to say.
To come from the Joe McDonough and to get, to make the knockout stages of the All-Ireland series, I think it would be, again, a huge leap forward for Offaly Hurling and a real statement that they're back at the top table and they're back to stay. And I think, to go to Jacqui's point, it's a realistic target as well and an ambition that they should have, Jacqui, isn't it? Would that be fair?
It'd be a shock if Offaly made it. Really would, when you consider the backdrop of the last couple of years, under 20 success, a really competitive 1B. I know people out, looking in, kind of, God, Offaly in the top 3. I think for hurling people who really watch games and appreciate the stick men they have, and they have some good lads in terms of Brian Dygan and older guys, the Samsons that are able to guide these lads. For me, it wouldn't really be a shock. And I think Johnny Kelly is a great manager, coach. I'm always impressed when he talks about Bursley, and looking at their performances, they are dying on their boots for him. So if Offaly made it, it wouldn't be a shock for me. We might need to get used to listening to the Offaly Rover being sung around maybe in Croke Park, or Michael Dignan might be singing it before the year is out.
I tell you, I'll take it if that is the case, because it's going to be fascinating. Lads, we'll leave it there. Enjoy week 1. I hope that it delivers everything that it looks like it's going to, because it's going to be a promising summer ahead, that's for sure. Jacqui, thanks a million for being with us. Myself and Rory.
And it's like Christmas Eve. We're all going to bed early tonight now.
That's it. Oh, we have to get ourselves sorted. Yeah. Right, lads, listen, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle.